Dutch extreme metal disruptors Autarkh produced one of the great albums of 2021 with their Form in Motion debut. Eschewing a human drummer in favour of an electronic flavouring to their beats, the band returned in November this year with their sophomore effort. Kirk Horton talks to Autarkh's mastermind Michel Nienhuis about new album Emergent for a track-by-track analysis, and also discusses the legacy of Michel's former band Dodecahedron. This is a Screen Blast Repeat exclusive interview.
Okay, so Autarkh, your second album, Emergent, released via Season of Mist on the 10th of November 2023. And we start with track number 1, which is called Open Focus, nearly 7 minutes in length. These are my initial observations when I heard this. So it's like the protesters and agitators have taken over the control room, and there's this public broadcast to raise awareness about the plight of millions of forgotten people. Guitar riffs pick apart simple arpeggio phrasings in the gaps between the chords. There's like an ethereal, atmospheric heaviness to it. And I've noted down here, imagine if Soundgarden received a song from Voivod for inclusion on a Blade Runner soundtrack. So my question is, what are the challenges of creating melody amongst this chaos?
Wow, what's a good question, man. I guess the challenge is to of course to balance it out. So to accomplish some sort of balance of the things of the atmosphere you're trying to get across, and sometimes it can be very clear because one guitar does this and the other one does that, and together they make this thing where it can be still rough and riffy but also atmospherical, and sometimes it requires well, for instance, with the final riff, David and I just go like, and we both do that riff, and then there's a background layer from Tyne, synthesizer layer going on, and then in a live situation, when I'm done singing, I will switch to some sort of chord thing that is like the background layer, and when writing this, it doesn't feel like a challenge necessarily to me, because I try to think, maybe this helps. So what I do sometimes, if I have an idea, like an abstract idea for a song, I first grab a piece of paper and I write 2 axes, like horizontal and vertical, and then maybe draw some tension span of the thing I'm trying to get across in intensity, and then maybe there's 1 or 2 musical ideas that I already have laying around, or trying to, like, okay, I have this idea, this type of riff, and then when I get to it, new possibilities, they pop up, and then it's like, oh, maybe this here, maybe that there, and then it's kind of a play of balance, Let's remove this riff here and see what happens then. Oh, then it's too empty. Maybe replace it with this. Oh, maybe not. And then that's just the very nice of the digital age, is that we can work in a DAW like Reaper, for instance, where you can just see the audio files that you recorded, which is you have a direct visual representation of what you are doing, as opposed to 30 years ago when it was just on tape.
Yeah.
And it was basically just audio and tape, and editing was a lot more difficult.
Yeah, I think the great balancer on this, but the main melodic tool is your voice on this song. Can you, just before we move on to track number 2, where did this come from, this vocal line? Did you have this in your head years ago and just humming it, and you just thought, I'd like to put that in a song one day? How did it come into being?
No, usually for our songs, the music is kind of demo finished, and then the vocals come in. And then sometimes we have to take into account that especially if it's a double line where David and I are singing at the same time, we have to take into account maybe some other layer needs to be removed in order to have it, upfront enough. But usually it works out with the stuff that is already there. And I just try to come up with something that, that makes sense to me. And sometimes I keep in mind that vocals are coming in, so I don't write a melody in the music, but it's a chord-based thing, and then something comes on top of it.
Yeah.
And just search. I thought for this song it would be good. I don't remember specifically, but I remember that I thought it was good to like hit immediately with like a because it's da down bam, and I had that, and when I wrote it, I was like, okay, this is going to be just da down, and then it should be some sort of chant, or at least the intensity of a chant, but I'm going to sing it as in it should be a melody.
Yeah, it surprised me when I heard this because I know Form in Motion. I thought, whoa, they've changed direction here in a good way. It's evolution, isn't it? It's still really heavy, obviously, and dark. Track number 2, Strife. The title tells us really that this is going to be heavy, doesn't it? Just that word in English. To me, do you know what I got from the beginning of this? That single note synth. I was expecting In Your Room by Depeche Mode to start. You know that song? I know it's only like one bubbling note. And it really, again, took me by surprise. This, to me, is what you get if you ask Trent Reznor to remix a post-metal band. That's the way I've described it here. And you've got this technique in this song where you will gather momentum, all the instruments, and then you will reset just to your vocals, but they're quite paranoid, your vocals in this, aren't they?
Yeah. They are. Yeah.
So my question for this song is, how did you approach the vocal lines for this song? And why is there such a frantic rush to get the words out in this song?
This song is written by David, and he wrote it for some other project that it was never used in an actual live context or anything or with a band, but he wrote it, and he had the vocal lines of the chorus were there, and I thought they were really nice, so I wanted to keep them, but I just wrote new lyrics for them, so to say. So I wrote new lyrics, and the sections in between, because it's a song that goes like and then drops, and then it goes back and drops, and I thought I have to do something with that. So to emphasize this contrast, I thought it would be very nice to turn to whispery growls and have a lot of change in intensity. Like I mentioned, oh no, wait, that was the different interview. But yeah, this song is indeed connected to a bit of a darker place, or a darker side of existence, and I thought having that contrast should be, or the contrast in the song, I could emphasize it with this kind of nasty, like whispering, like trying to get under your skin kind of feeling. Is that what you mean by? It doesn't. To me, it doesn't feel as rushed as the verse of "Lost to Sight," for instance, because that's really fast.
Yeah, and by the way, that when I say rushed, it's not a criticism either. That's the way that you've approached the music, and it increases the intensity levels. So I understand why you've done that purposely. I think.
Yeah, no, I think if you restless would, I guess, be a good description, or at least to me, like, okay, it feels a bit, it doesn't sit right. It's not a good place necessarily. That's a type of vibe that it has to me.
Yeah, and that's what you want the listener to experience. So it's very successful. I think you've described it perfectly. Those quieter moments, a whispered growl, a bit like Mike Patton, Faith No More, Angel Dust on that album. He kind of pioneered that, didn't he, as well? So it adds tension. Yeah,
I listen to Mike Patton a lot as well.
Yeah, it's just a great song. Track number 2. Track number 3. It's Duka, isn't it? Is that how you pronounce it?
Yes.
Duka. Yeah. There's some is that you or is that David, the hysterical screaming in the intro? It's like you're screaming into the void. Is that you?
That's me. Yeah.
Yeah. But do you know the band Tesseract, that English progressive metal band?
Yes.
It reminded me of that because you're playing these really heavy but quite kind of slow riffs, but it doesn't at any point seem like doom metal. It seems like you're floating along. It's the complete opposite of doom metal. But when you listen to the tempo, really heavy but quite grinding.
Yeah, we used a bit more. We used a bit more of fuzzy, gritty guitar sound, and
Yeah.
that intro was really like it's like a cry for. It's like an act of expressing frustration at the beginning, and so I just did it on the fucking top of my lungs.
Yeah.
It was a session where we only did screaming vocals for 4 hours, and it ruined my voice a bit for like 2 or 3 weeks. But when you're recording, you'll have to go for it. And this section specifically was meant to be extremely agonizing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing, right? My question here is, so I think what's unique about this, it's like I've put, this is how you use Pro Tools to make your synthetic music feel like it emerged in a torture cell. It's like you've used technology to make it sound analog. Does that make sense? It sounds really gritty, doesn't it? It's real raw. So talk to me about the mixing process. Who mixed this? Is it David who mixed it?
Yes.
What's your involvement in the mixing process?
I'm kind of I'm sitting, well, not all the time, but when we have to make the big decisions in the beginning, then I am sitting next to him and I'm listening because he's actually he's like a producer, but also a mixing engineer. So he's at work behind the computer. And a lot of times I'm just sitting next to him. And sometimes I'm involved in the process. Like we have to talk about, should we do this? Should we do that? Are we not forgetting this and that? And then we go and do that. And then he says, like, okay, hold on. I just need to fix this and that here because it's out of balance. And then I go turn to my laptop and do some emails or whatever. And then, and then whenever I hear something that's like, that doesn't sound right, or, hey, that's something we should, hey, or this gives me an idea. That type of sound, we could use that guitar sound at that section in that song as well. Yeah, let's do that. And that's how we kind of work then. So I'm kind of more of a, I don't know, supervising kind of producer on the side.
Yeah, it's probably a bit like Depeche Mode, isn't it? Martin Gore writes the songs, and then they'll go to, like the classic Depeche Mode era. Alan Wilder would then turn them into what they became. So you've written these songs, and he just gives you that last layer or texture that you can see in your head, probably. Yeah, it's really good. It must be fun writing these songs because of the digital technology, and that's a big part of how you approach.
Yeah, it's there's so many possibilities nowadays. So it that is awesome, but it also requires you to think even harder about the choices that you're going to make. Also, specifically the things you don't want to do, because everything can be at hand if you want. All these plugins, drum computers, synthesizers, everything. And I think by determining really well in the beginning, like what is this band about? What type of sound do we want, and what do we don't want? And luckily, David and I, we could just look at each other or just say one word and like, yeah, of course, yeah, that makes sense. Or should we change this to that? Yeah, I understand why. Also, without him saying it, that's so. I'm so thankful for that to be able to work in that type of context where you almost feel like you're sharing parts of your brains or something.
Yeah. So we move on to track number 4. Again, very big departure from the first album. And again, it's positive for me. So this one, I think you've really achieved the perfect balance between heavy and dark and melodic and luscious. There are certain parts in this that are almost shoegaze in texture. So I think there is actually a bit of dodecahedron's black metal in the beginning, but it's, again, reminds me of the band Voivod. And I've said here, I feel like I'm in an aeroplane that's heading for a crash landing, And then everything works out and a luscious shoegaze melody emerges with these really interesting bass guitar fills as well.
Yeah.
Talk to us about, I'm going to go slightly off topic. Why do you think it's been so difficult for metal bands to merge extreme metal with shoegaze? Because this is a successful example how you do it. Why do you think that's been difficult for other bands?
I don't know. I cannot speak on behalf of other bands.
Yeah, not on behalf of them. As a imagine you're a music critic. You must have heard. I'm not going to name any of these bands. You must have heard them. Have you thought, oh, that's a good idea? They've not quite developed it. I suppose my question is, how have you managed to do this? Merge these two contrasting.
Yeah,
dynamics?
well, it happened like this. It's kind of an interesting backstory because this is also a song that David wrote, but he wrote it already, I think, back in 2019 or maybe beginning 2020. Because when I first started talking to him about the possibility of us playing together in this band, and I explained to him certain composition methods that I used for these songs, the songs that I wrote for the third Dodecahedron album that ended up on the first Autarkh album. And he proceeded to experiment with that. So what he did basically was write a Dodecahedron song based on the idea that I had given him or the way I was working. Because at that point, Autarkh did not yet exist. I only had those songs laying around. I was talking to him about the possibility of using them in some new band. And he came up with this song, and I thought it was amazing. But I said that second part, that would not fit on Form in Motion, what later became Form in Motion, because of blah, 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 blah. And it sat on the shelf, and every once in a while I would run into it on my hard drive, and I was like, yeah, dude, this song. And then I was like, yeah, it's going to fit perfectly on that specific spot on the album Emergent, because it indeed is supposed to invoke that feeling that you are either crashing or lifting up in some rocket into space. You're going on some very tumultuous turbulence-like part of the journey, and then this is like it's an intense part of it, and then eventually you'll I don't know, get out of the atmosphere of the Earth, or you land into calmer waters, however you want to approach it. But that's what happens in that second part. So it's like you're kind of struggling. You've been struggling to do the work you need to do in these other the song before and Strife and Dukkha, and then here we go, and then okay, I feel okay, we've reached some sort of. Now I know and can feel that I've reached some sort of progress, and I feel calmer now. That's the thing kind of that happens in that song.
Yeah, it's a standout for me. It's one of when I reviewed it for Screenblast Repeat, we always pick out 3 standout tracks. This was one of the easy ones, and as is the next song, Refocus.
Right.
So I'm right in thinking, wasn't this the first single from the album?
Was
the first song?
The second.
Second. It's the first one I heard for the album.
Okay.
So you've got this like growling piece of unhinged death metal supercharged by a technology that might turn on its creators. It's really dangerous song, this, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a creepy like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that element of it. So I think we've already talked in another interview, you and I, that one of the concepts of this album is an elevated consciousness or a spiritual journey. What is this song about then? Because if track number 1's called Open Focus, track number 5 is called Refocus.
Yes.
Can you explain what this song's about?
Yeah, it's about getting about refocusing, because it's easy to get distracted if you're trying to work on something long term.
Mm-hmm.
So and then specifically, maybe if you use the analogy of a meditation where the open focus is meant to create this calm and super aware state of mind where you are super aware but not thinking of anything else, and then we journey through these less stable energy centers or songs on the album, and it's time. I mean, if you related to what I just said, like, okay, we were on this, very tumultuous, turbulence like thing, and then we ended up in this calmer part, the second part of track. It's like, okay, finally. And then you can experience, or at least that's what I have experienced, that you can think like, oh, I've achieved this situation, and now I am where I am supposed to be. But your life doesn't end at that point. It can be, in order to not get distracted of what you have in mind or what the actual end goal. You might think, look, okay, I've achieved some state, and now I am finished doing. I'm done learning or something. And that's really not the case from what I have seen or what I've experienced. So it's time to refocus and get back to that journey towards that, ka, or whatever you are, the final song on the album, so to say.
Yeah, it's perfect to place this at track number 5 then, isn't it? The halfway point of the album.
Yeah.
One more thing about this song, you are David doing that luscious vocal harmony in the background. Is that you?
That's David. Yeah.
Yeah, really imaginative, that, isn't it? I did not expect that when I heard the song, because it's a heavy song, this, isn't it? Creepy.
Yeah, it's a heavy song, and that's also a song written by David. And when he had the demo, he only, he had the riffs and the drums and stuff, and he only had that thing in there vocally, like,
yeah.
And I was like, okay, but there's space before and after it. So I think, okay, in this situation, we're going to try and see if it works. If I do one thing, then he does that thing. I do a similar thing to the first thing I did, and then he comes back to that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you hold, when you're singing, forgive me, I don't know the lyrics at this part. The first time we hear this, you really hold on to the last word, don't you? Dun, 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 dun. And then he comes in. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
It's really,
so they can overlap. Yeah.
Really sophisticated vocal phrasing. That I just didn't know that this band, that you were capable of doing this. I don't want that to be disrespectful, but when you listen to the first album, I love, extreme metal, so that's fine. Just give me 5 albums like that. But when I heard what you're doing on this song, I was like, whoa. It's a risk,
Kurt, we didn't know either we were capable of this like 2 years ago. So it's all new. It's also new to us.
Yeah, because if you're going to make that leap and evolve like that, my God, you need to make sure that you can back it up, and clearly you can. So yeah, excellent song. Track number 6 is an interlude, Aperture.
Yeah.
Good preparation for the second half of the album. I don't think we need to dwell on that, the interlude.
Okay.
Some sound design, should we call it? Let's go to The Eye of Horus, track number 7.
Mm-hmm.
Strangest song on the album. Have you been listening to Frank Zappa? The vocals, the vocals and guitars.
Yeah, it's a really weird song. It's I think the most experimental song on the album. It's a song that I wrote. Well, I was in a band a while called Our Oceans, and we were working on this very busy Mars Volta like drum beat, and I wrote some harmony for it, and back then, that harmony didn't fit that type of band, so it was disregarded. And at a later stage, when I was already out of the band, they ended up using the same framework and the same beat for the song. It's on the second Our Oceans album and the song is called Face Them. So you might hear similarities. But then when I was looking around on my hard drive for stuff, to get inspired by for Emergent, I ran into this one as well. I was like, okay, this could work if we try this and that, blah, blah, blah. And then it became quite, how do you say, frivolous song? I don't know. Yeah.
It's dun 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 dun, and the guitar is following it.
Yeah,
isn't it? So that's why it reminded me of Frank Zappa. This is so strange.
Yeah, it's a very strange song. Yeah,
but it works, and it soon settles into kind of like a sinister vibe, though, like a predatory creature in the bushes looking for its prey. Really.
Yeah.
I think that's the mood this really You do achieve nirvana on this song. You know, there is a lot of serenity, and you have that paradox, don't you, where there's a lot of aggression in here, and that's what I love.
Yeah. It's also meant to display indeed some kind of otherworldly, because you can sometimes in these meditations it can seem you're like really in some place that you've never visited before, or you're in some uncharted, inner territory, and that's also what this is kind of supposed to portray. So it can be beautiful, but it can be something really weird or ugly at the same time happening. And yeah, that's just, this song is also a little bit about confusion.
Yeah, it's like that term we use in English, out of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
You as musicians are out of your comfort zone, and the listener is. We're both in this new territory we don't really understand, and that's a real triumph to communicate that to a listener. I've noted here as well, there's a lot of progressive elements in this song. I think you have become more of a progressive metal band on this. You've always had that in your music, haven't you, with Dodecahedron, the avant-garde impulse. It's quite. There are some soothing moments in here, though, aren't there, as well? And what was this one of the first songs that you composed for this album, or did this come near the end?
Well, this was one thing that was laying around. Only I decided at a later stage to use it. So I don't really know.
It's something you had, isn't it, on your hard drive, and you've just developed it during the session.
Yeah, I don't know where in the process that actually was decided, but not very early on.
No, it's a triumph. Track number 8, Countless Kaleidoscopes.
Yes.
And I noted down here, this is interesting. Take out the screaming near the end, and you've got like a strange form of melodic dream rock. And I've put, it's like Simple Minds in the hands of Devin Townsend. Again, I feel like I'm daydreaming, but again, there's a lot of danger in that daydream.
Yeah, I mean, we are back. That last part of this song is, to me, very relevant, because it also, in atmosphere and intensity, it relates back to the first half of track, because it's also a bit about going really fast into something or out of something, which is emphasized by that that guitar line that's like, it's like just an ascending thing. And I'm referring in the lyrics, I'm referring to the Mandelbrot set, which is this fractal constellation where if you keep zooming in, it's still there, and it's got an endless. It's like some sort of mathematical or geometrical thing that I don't understand, but I find it fascinating if they try to make a visual representation out of it, and that inspired me to, it was just really fitting on that part of the song to kind of go back into that, here we go again, and then this time we do arrive at the final song, Ka, where it's more like, all right.
It always looks good on a screensaver, the Mandelbrot, like infinite. I don't know what to call it, but if you do a video for this, we know now what was in your head. If you do a video, you're gonna have to have the Mandelbrot patterns in there, the beautiful symmetry
definitely.
of them. So you just mentioned the final song, Ka, spelled K for kilo, A for alpha, 6 minutes and 13 seconds. Quite industrial, industrial powered atmospheric rock with rumbling bass guitar. And it's like I'm short of oxygen. I just need to find a vent hole or something where I can breathe. Is that what you intended there? Did you want it to be, you can gasp for breath and you grab it at the end and there's a relief?
Where this song is the relief, you mean?
Yeah, what I'm going to say is, what emotionally did you want to create with this song? What feeling in the listener did you hope to create?
Well, we start out with it's just a very stable thing. It's one note and it's a stable beat, and I'm doing some kind of something relatively at peace, so to say, compared to some other stuff on the album. And then it goes on for quite a long time, you know? You could argue it's even too long of the same thing, but slowly things are changing in the harmony, and the vocals keep getting a bit higher per section, you know, and it's kind of also a build up and trying to explain in the lyrics, you know, this state of mind, kind of all-encompassing realization of unity or whatever you know how you interpret it, and um, and then we break it down, and then we go into a middle section that is very calm and very like in movies they call this the immersion effect, when you know if something explodes very close to a person's ear, then they do this sound effect called immersion, like, and then you only hear, and you hear all the other sounds muffled away, to kind of resemble the fact that that person's ear has been affected by it, you know. So that's kind of the thing that happens here as well. And the reason why it happens is because I was kind of I thought it would be a great idea to draw a parallel here with the song Dodecahedron, An Ill-Defined Air of Otherness on the second Dodecahedron album, because it has exactly the same structure. It starts out with that same beat. It's actually kind of a very similar beat and a similar type of riffing, and then we drop into soundscapey whispering to just to take some time and get in, you know, like sink back and really think about what is it that has happened during this journey. And then we move into more of an epic, you know, how do you say, chord, what's the word?
I guess it's like an uplift.
Choir, that's the word I was trying to say. It's like a three vocal, you know, choir, and then a relatively, you know, a fairly consonant, uplifting experience, so to say.
Yeah, my final thoughts on this song. I noted down it's a good opportunity for you to again really demonstrate your new style of vocals. And I've noted down here, to me, it's clear that you had the idea for the vocal lines before the lyrics. Am I right or wrong there? I can hear, you can hum these vocals like the way you've done it. Did the lyrics come last, or did they come first and you had to fashion them?
Well, this is interesting. I'm not so sure, but what I do know is that I knew already before this song was written that it should be something related to that specific song on the Dodecahedron album.
Yeah.
And I used the same phrasing, or you know, on paper. I don't know if it sounds the same, but I remember it. It's like there's two words and then dash and then some words, and it's the same thing. That's what happens in the Dodecahedron song. So that, or it's three words like da 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 dash some other sentence, da 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 dash some other sentence. I remember that it looked like that on paper when it was the Dodecahedron lyrics. I don't know if they ended up looking that way in the booklet of the Dodecahedron album, but I remember it looked that way on the draft. So I was like, I'll do that same kind of thing, and then just follow up on notes that make sense to me. So I was like, okay, and I was kind of, there was some music theoretic thing deliberately working in the back of my mind, because at first it moves slowly from a minor to a major situation, and I needed to take that into account when choosing the notes for the vocal lines, because I was like, I wanted to very slowly, instead of like an abrupt change, I want to very slowly move into like from a minor to a major key kind of situation on the same root note. So that's why I picked the notes, and only in that last vocal part, I'm not saying it right now, but that's where that typical major third note comes in.
Wow, that's interesting to hear your thought process, that you knew the root notes that would be needed before you'd even designed the architecture, for the vocals. Yeah.
The thing about verbally trying to explain this is now it sounds like this is some sort of linear process, but some of these things are happening at the same time, and then it's really sometimes really hard to verbally explain how these things come into place.
Yeah, maybe they don't need to be explained. Maybe that's the beauty of it, the mystery of it, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, what I can say is what I just said, but it's not necessarily that I did this and then I did this and then I did this and then it worked. It's like a play or a puzzle sometimes.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yep. So that brings us to the end of the album then. Emergent, I'll just repeat, released on the prestigious metal label Season of Mist on the 10th of November. Go out and buy the record, autarkh.com, and you can listen to the album on Bandcamp, Deezer, Apple Music, Spotify, YouTube. Go and watch the videos. Any final thoughts before we end this analysis of your sophomore album, Michel?
Well, first and foremost, thank you so much for having us, Kirk. It was a pleasure. I'm very thankful to be able to, talk a little bit about my music, and I hope a lot of people can enjoy it. If you check it out and you do like what you hear, please pay a visit to our website, autarkh.com, and we also have a shop there with physical products, t-shirts, long sleeves, hoodies, vinyl, etc. And we're still a small band and struggling to make ends meet. So if you like what we do and if you wish to support us, then please do so at that shop. And yeah, that's just much appreciated. Thank you so much.
Excellent. I'll be doing that after this. When we finish recording, I'll be going straight to autarkh.com. So thank you once again, Michel. So for everyone who's sat through this, Michel Nienhuis, guitarist, founder of Autarkh, and obviously former member of Dodecahedron. Thank you very much for joining us.